First of all, I think the starting point is that we're having this conversation. It is inconceivable that a prior convention, I think with either party, that infrastructure and transportation would be presented as a major area of domestic policy to be discussed in specific and then be discussed with relevance to environmental sustainability. And I think the reason why we're having this conversation is there's an understanding that infrastructure and transportation is a means to some very important ends for the country, for some very important national priorities, competing globally, reducing demand, achieving environmental sustainability, energy independence, et cetera. I think there's also a recognition that perhaps more so than other areas of domestic policy, transportation is both broken. We don't have the clear purpose and vision that we had back in the 1950s when we built the interstate, and perhaps even in the early 1990s when Senator Moynihan pushed through this intermodal surface transportation effort that really tried for the first time in modern federal policy to connect transportation to competitiveness and connect it to smart development of metropolitan areas. So I think the starting point that we have here, we recognize this is a critical area of domestic policy. We recognize that the existing set of programs and policies that we have today are fundamentally broken. And that gives us an opportunity, I think, to reframe this in some very fresh ways. Where does the federal government lead on issues of national significance? Where do we really empower states and the major metropolitan areas to take control of their destiny? And how do we maximize performance? How do we have that level of data and information and performance measures and collaboration with the private sector financing and market mechanisms so that we can really deal with the totality of this issue? But for those of us who've been laboring in the vineyards, and I worked on the banking committee when Senator Moynihan pushed through ICE-T, this is remarkable that we're having this conversation because for a long time, transportation was a conversation that only self-interested constituencies had. And for the first time, I think in a long time, it's perceived this is critical to competitiveness, it's critical to the environment. It brings more people to the table to reset the table for broader purposes.